All right, welcome back to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. And today, as we continue our introduction to aircraft insurance kind of series, we want to touch on this coverage called medical payments. In other episodes, we've talked about aircraft physical damage or hull coverage. We've talked about kind of a brief overview of aircraft liability coverage, which kind of talked about coverages A, B, C, and D under the insuring agreements of the policy. A lot of times coverage E on an average aircraft insurance policy is called medical payments. And this is a coverage a lot of people have question about because it isn't medical insurance and it doesn't supplant your liability coverage. I'll read a sample definition of medical payments. It's basically to pay all reasonable medical expenses occurred within 1 year from the date of injury to or each passenger who sustains bodily injury caused by an occurrence during the policy period, provided the aircraft being used by or with the permission of the named insured. So this is generally, a kind of a throw-in coverage. Limits may be as low as $1,000 each person, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 average. Some turbine fleets may be 25 or 50, but it's usually an included coverage, and it has a couple specific functions. Number one, it's a no-fault type of coverage. It doesn't have to be liability demonstrated. It's just a quick payment solution for, cuts and bruises, scrapes, some minor medical treatments, but it could go to ambulatory expenses or even funeral expenses in certain cases. I've seen policies a little bit differently. It may or may not apply to the named insured. Often it does, but that's something you need to check in your policies. And this doesn't replace liability. If it's, obviously if someone's injured besides yourself or your employees, a third party is injured, then the aircraft legal liability coverage would come into play that we've discussed in another episode. So these are smaller type of medical things. No fault is needed. Just basic medical expenses, perhaps some ambulatory or funeral expenses may be covered under this section. But I hope that brief explanation of medical payments kind of clears up any confusion you might have about it. Again, it is not medical insurance. It doesn't replace or limit the liability coverage. And it's important to read your policy to make sure that whether that includes or excludes the named insured, but typically it does include them. All right, well, that's all for this episode, a quick one. Until next time, we're wishing you blue skies and unlimited visibilities.
Thanks for listening to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. If you found this episode of value, please share it with someone who would benefit from this information. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss any new episodes and to help our show have more impact. This episode is brought to you by Aeris Insurance Solutions, your flight plan for navigating the turbulence of aviation insurance. For more information, visit aerisinsurance.com. That is www.aerisinsurance.com. Disclaimer. These episodes are for educational purposes only, and due to the changing regulatory and legal nature of the business, some information may change over time. Having a well-educated and experienced aviation insurance broker on your team is an absolute requirement to success in business and for managing your aircraft and aviation business risks.